introduce how you first became involved with Zoombinis and why you really wanted to work on the project.
About the project that I think makes it such a sort of dream thing for us was that at the time, Broderbund was very focused on making it an amazing product.
Were kids involved in the creating of the game? Like, how did you test and QA a lot of the game as it was being built in the 90s?
We would go to schools nearby regularly. I remember going out to Boston and going to schools. We test puzzles all along the way.
We did not have pressure from leadership on much of anything. It was really about, we need to make this product great.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the world of Zoombinis. This is our inaugural podcast, which is so exciting for us. My name is Lexi, and I'll be your host over the next few weeks, where we dive deep into how Zoombinis got started. Of course, all of you love Zoombinis, and all of our fans from the 90s obviously remember growing up and playing at school. Well, now we've moved to, obviously, 2025, where we have it all over mobile. We have our Zoombinis clubs, and more people are asking about what's going on behind the scenes. So today we actually have two of the OGs from the original Broderbund development, Dennis Leahy and Michelle Bushneff, which they both worked on the original vision with Broderbund in the 1990s. Dennis is, of course, the writer of the opening sequence, and Michelle was the VP and creative director at that time. Welcome, guys, and thank you for being on our first episode.
Thanks. Good to be here.
Thanks. I'll just say I wasn't the VP at the time.
Okay. You weren't the VP, but you're the VP of our hearts. So you guys both played key roles in shaping the world of Zoombinis, which is really cool because there's so much that has gone into the gameplay and the thought behind Zoombinis, but there's so much that hasn't been explored. So, you know what? Could you, to start, just introduce how you first became involved with Zoombinis and why you really wanted to work on the project?
You want to go, Michelle?
Sure. It just was connected to my role at the time at Broderbund, leading the creative team in what we call the edutainment division. And I think, what attracted to all of us to the project was just the puzzle designs were brilliant. And the opportunity to kind of build a story and a world around that. And we had an amazing creative team at that time. And the years prior to that, Broderbund was very much on the forefront of creative development in our products. So the opportunity to bring all that creative force to the product was exciting.
Yeah. And I know, I think I lobbied for it. I had been at Broderbund for about 3 years, and I had, a few of the like what was it, Playroom, and a couple of the older so-called edutainment, which I hate that word, but the edutainment names. But I remember basically lobbying, once I saw it and had an opportunity to work on it. I just, it was this really fascinating game. We liked thinking games there. We didn't, obviously we're in the, educational part of it. So we weren't into Twitch games. We would play Prince of Persia and things like that after work. During lunchtime, a lot of people were playing, whatever the shooter games were, some of the guys.
Well, it was Call of Duty, I think, still at that time. That was the first Call of Duty back then.
Yeah. What's that other one? Oh, gosh. It's actually played a big role in NVIDIA's. It's
Modern Warfare, or
even before that. We're talking like the
Tech
OG.
War. There was Mech Warrior that I played a long time ago.
It'll come to me in a little bit, because I remember the guys used to take breaks, by the way, from where we were, and they would all be playing the shooter games, and I'd go play volleyball or something. But
well, you're in the developer area. You're in games. I would assume that at least some of your personal life spilled over into the development side of things.
100%. But yeah, so
Uh,
I was just glad to be working with the crew that had been assembled by the VP of our of our division, and of course with Michelle being the art director. It was great to be able to work with her.
so with Broderbund, and I know it doesn't exist in the same fashion anymore. I mean, what was the industry like at the time? Were you guys like, was it just like a conveyor belt, like we're doing this game, get it out, get it done, or was there like some actual thought to the projects and what Broderbund stood for?
We were just talking about
Uh,
that last night. You
yeah,
want to go, Michelle?
Eh,
yeah. Dennis and I had a little memory bank meld last night, and we were
aw,
talking about that. I mean, that's one of the things about the project that I think makes it such a like sort of dream thing for us was that at the time, I mean, Broderbund was um, very focused on making it an amazing product. And so
okay,
we didn't, while we had to track our budgets and, make sure that people were aware of it, we did not have pressure from leadership to, um, on much of anything. It was really about we need to make this product great.
Right.
And that just opened up the possibilities for us in so many ways and just made it what it is, honestly.
Yeah, that's what I remember. A lot of games that we had done previous to that, the educational software games, they were basically what I would call like flip guard games.
uh-huh.
You have something on one side, let's say the color yellow, they'd have to know it's yellow. And now if you have yellow and red, it'll make, you know what I mean? It was really, it wasn't exciting. It wasn't interesting. It wasn't engaging. It was more like, oh, check, check, check. You
Yeah,
finish the game. Whereas this one, it was Chris actually used to say it was kind of like the, the satisfying, time of just enjoying thinking. So, it was just a
yeah,
game. It was something like when you play chess or when you play other things like Mist had come out of partnership with Broderbund. So that same kind of thing, those kind of puzzles that can drive the story, right? Because that was a big element of it, and it was we were allowed to really feature that and really obviously honor that. And you see, all the art and story, it's all fit into the puzzles made sense in the context of the
so it was almost
story.
like you guys treated this more like um an RPG. Like I feel like even though there's not as a complex story like you would see with Final Fantasy, let's say,
Right.
there's still some thought into it. And Michelle, when you look at the artistry that's in every piece, every background, like it really tells more of a story for the games. And oftentimes, like we get kids and adults writing in and creating their own art and creating their own stories about the lore about it because
It's
there's
cool.
so much
Mhm.
undiscovered country in it. So, I mean, when you were art director at the time, um, I mean, what were you thinking when you were coming up with the concepts of not just the Zoombinis, but the world they live in?
Well, I mean, we had an exceptional team of people, a couple of classically trained animators who actually came out of Sheridan College up in Canada.
Oh,
And
that's right. That's
they
right.
were just really, yeah, that was my favorite
I
recruiting
forgot
ground.
about that. Yeah.
Oh, Sheridan is my alma mater too. That's where I went to do
Oh,
my
All
graphic
right.
design stuff. So, I mean, it's kind of the mecca. It's, Sheridan art is like, that's where you go, right? A lot of
mm,
Right.
my friends from the same year, like they ended up going to Disney being animators now, and
right.
it's super cool to see that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, there was Cal Arts in the US, but Sheridan had just the classically trained animators that came out of there were phenomenal. And so a lot of it was collaboration, and Dennis was a big part of that as well. He wasn't just a producer, product manager. He's a really super creative guy. So the collaboration with the team was really how it all came together. We had a guy
Hmm.
on the team in terms of like the background art. You probably know the original background art was hand painted.
Yeah.
Um, So we were borrowing a lot from the film industry at the time, including some of the technology tools that were emerging to
Uh-huh.
take like cell animation into the digital realm. And so at the same time we were conceptualizing like the world and the look and feel of it, we were adopting these tools, these, emerging technologies that weren't intended for the small screen, and then bridging the gap between the sort of film world and the PC world. And
So the
there was,
so the development was really at a professional level. I mean,
Wow.
game development in the 90s was just like, to me, the golden age, because you had all of these creatives wanting to do more and using this as a testing ground for those things, Michelle, but even more so, I mean, it was just the vibe, right? You had
Yeah.
$500 studio loft apartments and being able to like thrive. And as you said, being able to just go for quality and go for the brilliance without having to worry about all of these potential cancellation issues. That's
Yeah.
just, I mean, I think that was wonderful. And Dennis, in terms of you setting the stage with the opening credits, can you tell me a little bit more about your thoughts behind that storytelling piece and what you really wanted to bring to the game?
Yeah, actually, I do. I will say something about that, but if I could actually just rewind a second,
Okay.
because when Michelle was talking about, having these classically trained animators and getting to be part of the process, one of the nice thing about it is we had a really great collaborative feel. I forget the period of time. Did we work on it? I know we worked on it for at least 2 years, and we would try all different versions of seating. Like there was a time when engineering was over there and art was over there, and et cetera, et cetera. And during this, we did a few different rounds where eventually you'd have, maybe some of the artists, some of the engineers sitting near each other because there was a whole bunch of back and forth. It's a lot easier when you're on the same part of the floor if you're
Mm-hmm.
not sitting next to the guy. So there's so many decisions, so many questions answered just by somebody walking or shouting over the cubicle. And that also helped because we also were really big into marshmallow wars. So, like we'd attack, we had slingshots. I remember it was, because in my department for producers, it was like 80% women, and the engineers was probably 85% guys, right?
Yeah.
So I remember because I have 5 sisters, and 3 daughters, so I would go of course with our crew, and we would whoop those guys. And
I think
we would,
also too, like, I mean, that's the thing is I've grown up in a remote world, but there's something to be said when the barriers break down, when you're working together on a project. It's like, okay, guys, I'm gonna have to fart in front of you. You're gonna have to see the worst of me, especially those late nights.
oh
Sometimes like it's no longer a professional veil. It's like we're in this
no,
together and you're
right.
gonna see the worst and the best of me. Be prepared, watch out. I would love to know about when you guys were working together. I mean, all different types of, honestly, video games in general, you hear these crazy behind the scenes stories of how they came up with the ideas, what they were like. It was a different time,
Yeah.
substances involved too. But
Yeah.
with Zoombinis, I feel like there's so much emotion. And even in the 90s, it's not necessarily mirroring now. There was still a lot of social worry. There was still a lot of political worry. Things were going on. And now you have these blue guys who are going to influence kids for computational thinking.
Right.
But there's still such an overtone of that intelligent, informed idea of, okay, this is what the world is, this is what the society is, and we have to teach you about how to think about this creatively while still thinking about what's going on in the world around you. So,
Yeah.
by all means, Dennis, like, let me know that behind the
Yeah.
scenes lore here.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, first of all, as far as all the you know, even the overall story itself, that really came out of conversations with Chris and Scott, and then all of us. The whole idea of them, escaping some kind of persecution. That's a story as old as humans, right?
Yeah.
Unfortunately. And the whole thing about being inclusive, we didn't have, uh, frankly, politics in the 90s I was so happy to never have to think about what was going on in DC, right? But you
Yeah.
still had the social issues. You still had inclusion. We didn't have it by the terms. We didn't have people who were anti-DEI and pro-DEI and all that stuff, right? But it was just basic human feeling of, the whole thing about somebody in power taking advantage of someone who's weak. So that sets the overall story. Obviously, those are important for all of us. But Chris and Scott, they came up with the overall concept of it. But it was our collaborating or talking about it. How do we express that? How do we tell that whole story? And it was very collaborative. We all contributed to it. One of the things you asked about was the opening. I told Michelle this last night. I don't specifically remember writing any line in the entire thing, but I know that I was a lead writer and I was basically the editor, and I really was all the things that I would submit, because obviously I'd be submitting pages of things to Michelle, to Lori, right? I'm trying to remember.
Yeah.
Lori, and I submitted to them first, and if I could get them to laugh, I knew that it was probably going to be good, and then I know they have my back when we presented it to Scott and Chris. And so I told Michelle last night I was really going for, I loved Princess Bride, Monty Python, just these old classics that are fun, funny, witty. They don't talk down to people with the humor.
Yeah.
And they can still tell a story and tell a message without, banging you over the head or being too insipid, you know?
Yeah.
So that's really how the overall tone, and it fit. Scott and Chris were very, I remember having to walk around the parking lot and we would have conversations about whether it's a puzzle or some lines or dates or whatever. And they would be talking about The Simpsons, because The Simpsons had really basically just come out during the 90s, I think. And so, we all like that sense of humor, and it all came, from collaboration, but, with the idea that, we want to not talk down to the kids.
Yeah, and I think that's important because, I mean, when building educational games now, I know a lot of people, they'll have kids everywhere and they over-test. They, make sure that they can figure out each thing. But there's something to be said about understanding that kids have sort of a wider breadth of humor. They're trying to figure things out on their own.
Right.
And I mean, I can't tell you how many people like write into the Facebook page and saying about how their kid is just coming up with these crazy funny stories, but looking at Zoombinis and it's becoming their own world, and they're kind of growing up. It becomes a parasocial relationship, but at the same time, that's what the game's there for. It's to help them figure these things out.
Yeah.
Now, with that being said, were kids involved in the creating of the game? Like, how did you test and QA a lot of the game as it was being built in the 90s?
Yeah. We did a lot. We would go to schools nearby regularly. I remember going out to Boston and going to schools. We test puzzles all along the way. Sometimes, if I remember right, we may have even started with testing paper puzzles. But they had done, because they did the development in the MIT lab. A lot of the pedagogy behind it was already tested, approved. But we also wanted it to, is it going to engage the kid and get them to, want to stay working? And that was by bringing it to the schools on a regular basis. And I know Michelle, we brought it to the Getty. She the connection that she had, Getty Museum.
Well, yeah, the Getty home actually. And then, I mean, the Scott and Chris had the tabletop game that they brought to Broderbund. And I remember there's, stories have been told about how Lori, who was our VP and publisher at the time, had a daughter in the age range, and she took it home and her daughter absolutely loved it. And so that was sort of the clincher to do a deal with Turk on publishing the game.
Yeah, when the president likes it, you kind of go with it. I think that's
when
development and in politics. If the president likes it, we're going to get it done.
And even more so if the publisher's kid likes it.
Yeah.
So, Michelle, there was something we wanted to ask you. Very family. So we saw a post about a person in a Zoombini costume. And while you guys were doing all of these events and stuff, can you give us more context about the Zoombinis costume? And I know this is like a left turn, but everybody has been wondering what happened to that costume and who was in it and what were they doing?
Okay, it's a good story. So that was me in the picture that you have.
Okay.
Wearing the costume, and I had brought it home. I had borrowed it because this goes back to the Getty story, because Dennis and I had agreed to come to a very exclusive private preschool in the home of Gordon and Ann Getty in San Francisco.
Oh, okay.
And my connection there was through my brother's family. His wife worked for them, and his kids went to the preschool. So I had brought it home, and the night before I put on the costume to show off to neighborhood kids. But it was basically this construction that had two fans on the inside that kept it inflated to be round.
Okay.
And it was very cool. And so the next day, I pack it up. We go down to San Francisco, and Dennis agreed to wear the costume. And so we did a little appearance there, but like shortly after he put the costume on, one of the fans died. So it was like,
oh no,
it was like half inflated. And poor
like
Dennis,
just half, like the poor Zoombini had a stroke. It's just deflated on the one side.
Yeah.
Something like that.
The arm, oh my God.
And then Dennis is inside this thing, like the fan, the sides inflating it kept you cool. So poor Dennis is inside this thing sweating like crazy. And
oh no.
For the team.
And at the end, my sister-in-law offered to give us a tour around the mansion. And I kind of looked to Dennis like, do you want to do this? Because he came out of this suit. Like Dennis had, great hair that was always well coiffed. And it was, it was every which way. And he was
like some of the Zoombinis, actually. Right?
He had a day.
Yeah.
But he was game for it. So we finished out the day. But it was a cool costume.
Do we still have, what happened to that costume?
No idea. Because, at some, not long after Zoombinis, Bun was acquired.
Yeah.
By, you may know your friend Kevin O'Leary up there in Canada.
Yeah.
His company acquired Bun back in the day. And so who knows what happened to that costume.
Mr. Wonderful, I need that costume back, please.
There you go. Yep.
I mean, like we want to do conferences. And now with the lasting legacy of Zoombinis, like it's insane how so many people remember Zoombinis being in classrooms. I'm just shocked that back then you guys can you tell us a little about what was going on in terms of where Zoombinis was going? Was that part of your charge?
I'm sorry, what do you mean?
Were you selling Zoombinis to schools? Was this supposed to be a mainstream type of game?
Yeah, you got that, Michelle?
Sure. Well, it was developed as a product, like many of Bun's products, like Carmen Sandiego, that had, developed a similar kind of following and has transcended many generations. It's educational, but it's so fun and entertaining that it isn't viewed as educational. So similarly, the approach with Zoombinis, and I know that, Chris and Scott in interviews have talked about how they hated the name. They didn't want it to come off like an educational game.
Yeah.
So they didn't like the logical part of it. But in the end, that was important to the success of it because it got sold into the schools because Bun had a whole division selling into schools as well as into the general market. And the two of them were so complementary to each other in terms of kids go to school and play these games and then they want it and, they influence their parents to buy it. And their parents see it as something that's valuable and beneficial to their kids. So, and
Right.
then, the other piece of it that I like to talk about is just how it also had, and this wasn't necessarily something we designed into it. It was just the nature of how it came together. It had this very Harry Potter-esque kind of appeal where you
Mm-hmm.
had the target age group, but the younger kids wanted to play with their older siblings, and the parents, it had that, Simpsons humor appeal or Pixar film appeal where
Right.
it was interesting and fun for the parents as well. So it just broke out of its age range at the time and broke out of any sort of mold for how a product like that can succeed. And also, right out the gate, Dennis brought this up last night, was winning awards too.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah. 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 And that was while we were doing the testing, we'd leave, the beta versions with a variety of kids take it home. And we had a number of, whether they were the teachers or the parents, telling us, well, once they put their child, the child went to bed, the parent would stay up playing the game. So we saw that there was going to be some sort of
Yeah.
cross appeal, but you had to get it. How are you going to get it into the, are the parents going out there saying, hey, I want to look for a logic game for my child? No, I want some sort of educational software, something that's learning, but something that's going to be, appealing, visually appealing, and not only visually appealing, the soundtrack on it, I think, is fantastic as well. But
Absolutely.
we heard from we heard from a lot of people. I was just talking to my mom last night, and she remembers all my nieces and nephews. They would play it when they were over her house, so her grandchildren. And she
Mm-hmm.
said, and once they would go to bed, she'd play it for hours. So we saw that 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 crossover
Yeah.
appeal to it. It was we saw it early on. It was good to see it actually get traction.
Now, did you guys ever think about putting it on something like a Nintendo, or was it just the fact that the animations and what you could do on PC was just so much easier than to do a handheld? And I guess there wasn't many consoles at the time either.
Yeah, well, there were a lot
there,
of
there
consoles
was,
per
yeah,
se, but I think with that one, because it was, I think, the initial was get it on a laptop,
Yeah.
get it, the Windows, the Apple, get it on both of those. I know we early on had an online version of it. I think it might have been in '97.
Oh,
It was,
wow.
yeah, soon after we did a version. Um, I remember, was that Daniel? I think Daniel, the one who was a combination artist and programmer in his mind.
yeah. He
I
did
think
a
he's the
mud
one
ball
that helped.
wall.
Yeah, very, very early version of an online game that was, played by a lot of people.
And even in that original game, and I know there were expansions later on, but there's debate about those expansions. In that main world of Zoombinis, did you feel like there could have been more added to it, or narratives that, you just had to cut that you wish you were able to include? Or do you think the game is perfect as is?
Well, I think it's pretty perfect. I mean, there's so much to it in terms of to build out the ultimate Zoombieville would I mean, I know I've never done it, but that could take forever. All the different levels that you can play. I feel like it's pretty comprehensive. Could there have been sequels? Sure. I mean, I know there were some. Obviously none of us were involved in that. But I you know, I think it had potential to have plenty of iterations on it. But I
Yeah,
think what we came out with initially, I don't look back on it and think, oh, I wish we would have done this or added that.
Okay.
yeah, there was so much to it because I remember thinking at the time, um, because it was such a full game, there was so much gameplay in it. All the games, all the levels. Um, I was comparing it way back when is like the amount of money that you're paying for this versus how much enjoyment you get. Because we're looking at games that would get at least 80 hours of play, if not
Yep.
more, right? And then you thought about, well, for the price of a movie back then, well, what it might be, 10 or $15. You go 3 hours and maybe you see it twice. Maybe you see a movie that you really like twice. But here we had something that was easily get people involved 80, 90 or more hours. So I think we felt it was like we gave them everything. We gave them the feast. If anything, frankly, maybe I wonder if looking back, if we could have made it into 2 games in and of itself so that, people would finish this part and then get to, still have 60, 80 hours of play to get the next part.
Why do you think Zoombinis has endured so far? And I ask that because it seems like maybe that's why, is that there's always something new to be explored at that gameplay level. But why do you think that Zoombinis is still somewhere in the cockles of the hearts of students in the United States who are now parents?
Personally, I mean, I think the puzzles are brilliant, and I love logic games and word games and stuff like that. I'm not a RPG gamer or anything, but so there's that aspect of it. But I think the way the story and the world is built around it, and the level of emotional immersion you have in that, from creating these characters, they're your people. They're our people as a player. We're trying to move them from place to place. We feel bad if some get left behind. We have to go back and get them and keep them. I just think there's the depth of sort of emotional connection that you make into the world of the Zoombinis has a lot to do with it.
Yeah. And I think the performances, you have a lot of the characters that are there, they're puzzles.
Everybody loves Arno. I don't know why. The thing, it's a pizza troll. I don't know what he is, but everybody loves him, but he is kind of mean.
He's very mean. Yeah.
Just don't throw my food, dude.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah. Can I tell you a little thing about that?
He's just hangry.
That's it. He's always hangry. That was actually my neighbor, the actor who did that. He was my neighbor, and he had been on Broadway, Pirates of Penzance, things like that.
Oh my God, no way.
Yeah, so I had him in for we did a playroom that had some songs, and so I had him in for that because we had it's Northern California, everyone lives on less than a fifth of an acre, so I could hear him singing, through the bamboo.
Okay.
And, so I had him in for. Originally he was going to do 1 song. He did probably 6 songs, and then we had him in for Zoombinis, and he did all these great characters. And I think his characters across the board, like he's the riverboat guy.
Yeah, Captain Cajun.
He's that one. He's a few different people, but those performances, everything about it, it was so full, so rich. You combine everything. The music I thought is top. I don't see a weakness in the entire game.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's I can't believe the response that we're having right now. David at Turk used the Kickstarter to relaunch it in 2016. It got some interest, but just a few months of putting this out there, putting some money behind it. And I mean, we have 40,000 active users.
Great.
And people get excited. And, teachers who are playing it now want to put it in their schools. So we want to get things going. And it's just, I mean, just this alone, I've had my friends' kids be like, they want this on their purses because everybody's about Labubu's and crap now. And this is just the most adorable thing.
That's cute.
But I can say, with our team, we're all over the board. And my one colleague who is Palestinian, he's living in Turkey, he is very invested in his Zoombinis. And you have to take a step back when you lose some. But he's been going through he's already went through the game twice.
Wow.
So, I mean,
that's something.
I cannot believe how Zoombinis is impacting people on the daily. And like you said, it's just that emotional investment. You want all of them to survive, It's 101 Dalmatians, but with Zoombinis, and it's even worse. You guys really made an immersive experience with Zoombinis. And do you think that the experience working with Zoombinis bled into other projects, or was this sort of a very unique experience for you guys?
Well, I mean, it wasn't unique in the approach that we took, which we took
Okay.
to everything in terms of
Right.
like really everything was an opportunity to innovate creatively. And we were always on the forefront of emerging tools and technology on the creative side. But I mean, the one thing it did do for me is like ruin my my expectations for projects in the future of my career. I mean, I went on to work on some great things, but the whole Burdabund experience and the experience with projects like Carmen Sandiego and Zubinis just set a really high bar for, I think, everybody
Mm-hmm.
in terms
Um,
of like the types of projects they want to work on and the types
oh
of
yeah.
people they want to work with. So
Yeah,
so in that
100%.
sense, it had a huge impact. And the legacy of it is just exciting. Like I get contacted by people who find me online. And, I was telling Dennis last night, recently heard from somebody who was in art school and like wanted to completely deconstruct how the original graphics were made. And so that he could recreate something in that
That is
style.
so cool.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
trying to find somebody who can do an anatomy of a Zoombini. I love the show Aqua Teen Hunger Force, and one of the
Uh-huh.
characters, Frylock, it has an anatomy of Frylock, and it's one of those things where again, that lore, that back history, it doesn't have a set story, so
Mm.
anything can come from it.
Yeah, well,
Any idea?
I should put you in touch with Jason and Bob, the animators. They're both brilliant. I mean, Jason went on to do film work, that's award-winning film work. He's brilliant. Bob is
Wow.
now the art director for the MLB, Major League
Whoa.
Baseball, and I suspect they would love to do that.
I mean, humble beginnings with an educational game to like all of
Hmm.
you guys seem to have had such a great career after Zoombinis. Just based on your merit, but it really feels like Zoombinis is like a kismet moment for you guys. You working on it sort of helped broaden your horizons a little bit. I mean, I'm not just saying that because, David, who's the CTO, loves Zoombinis and it's his baby and I want him to feel special. But at the same time, it seemed like Zoombinis brought so many people together, but almost influenced a generation of animators and art directors and even gaming in general to be something more than it was.
Yeah, it was a great experience, and we brought incredible talent into it. Dennis, the entire creative team, the entire audio, voice talent, everybody, the technology, the folks behind it, just a bunch of rock star talent, and set up in an environment to succeed and to be empowered to like create. I hate to say create art, but in some ways,
Oh yeah.
that's what it felt like to us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was the thing is we were talking about this last night is that Broderman had come out with a bunch of great products before that, obviously the Carmen Sandiego line,
Mm-hmm.
Prince of Persia, things that have gone on to, multiple venues from, movies or whatever. But having that environment is what kept a bunch of people there, drew a bunch of people there. I actually had quit a higher paying job and went through QA for I had to get I couldn't just walk into a producer job even though I had been one, but because it was Broderbund, I went through like probably 18 months of being in the QA lab so that I could
Mm-hmm.
get that shot at assistant producer so that I could become a producer so I could work on cool products because there was so many good products, so many things worth working on. And so you had
Mm-hmm.
this talent, and frankly, Michelle, as the art director, set the tone. That's, there was a level that this is the level we hit. You don't settle for 70%. We're
Yeah.
always up in the 90s, and that drew great people. That drew,
Yeah.
like you said, some of the artists like Jason and Bob who worked on it, and others, sound department people who are, recording musicians. You know, that hit that, and everyone, you know, would go on to do other cool projects after that as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you guys stick into the gaming space, or did you move on after Broderbund?
I continued on in sort of ed tech, for lack of a
Okay.
better word. After Bourbon, I went to Leapfrog, which was at the time
Yep.
a very small company, but obviously grew huge, and worked on the LeapPad library of books. So before iPads, the LeapPad was the
I remember
tool
those.
thing, sliced bread, yeah. Um, and then like when social media and that type of technology emerged, I sort of shifted over to the marketing world and have worked in like emerging spaces in digital marketing since the
Okay.
onset of that time. But not moved away from games and software products right after Leapfrog. Well, I did actually work for a cell phone game company for a while before
Okay.
iPhone, like when the cell phone market was very fragmented and weird. But I did work in that space for a while too.
Yeah.
That's
So
so cool.
And I went to Lego, and after a few years, you know, more at Broderbund, I went to Lego, and we were part of the crew that did the Lego Mindstorms, which is another MIT product,
Yeah.
but we brought it into popular, you know, for homes. So I worked with them for a little while, and then I ran their games division for a couple of years, and then went to a couple
So cool.
startups doing mobile phone games for a bit, and then I said, you know what? I'm spending too much time on planes, and I have been working with my hands, doing landscape design and construction, and I'm sitting at a house that I've been remodeling, 100-year-old house that I gutted and remodeling right now. So I completely stepped out of the tech world,
Yeah.
other than to, you know, the phone in my hand and whatever new technology I can find.
Yeah, I often find that with a lot of tech workers is once they sort of slow down and they're comfortable, they're like, it's not becoming a Luddite. It's like, okay, I got my fill of this. It's cool. And they sort of step away and you're like, they come from the screen and they're like, oh wow, there's clouds in the sky. That's cool.
yeah.
But that's
Yeah.
really interesting because I know like right now we're seeing an evolution of education technology and everybody has games, but I mean gaming in general, especially console gaming, it's going to these massive MMORPGs where,
Hmm.
you know, you have one map and they don't really have time into the story and it's just shoot, reward, that's it.
Yeah.
And that's the thing about Zoombinis I really like is because it doesn't have that set story. It's not an RPG, but it is an RPG. But you can play it a million times and you're
Right.
still learning something new. You're still
Hmm.
thinking in a different way. And I mean, that is for me the magic behind this 90s wonder is
Hmm.
that, you know, you may hear Arno say, make me a pizza a million times, but it's the combinations, it's the approach that changes. And like, even as an adult, it helps me to think clearer. It literally helps me to de-stress from my
Yes.
anxiety because I can just like slow down and I'm like, okay,
Mhm.
I gotta take a minute. I gotta think. Let's reconfigure the way I'm reacting right now.
Right.
And
It's good for that, right?
yeah,
It's like people
Mhm.
use it as that instead of, like, you know, I think it might be a similar feel to those who might want to play you know, what is it, Wordle and games like that, that you need something to take you away from what you're dealing with, but you don't want to be doom scrolling, you know, as your de-stressor. You go off and you play something like that for a few minutes. Your brain is engaged, but it's not, and it's still processing the other things, but it's not down in the, you know, down in the front lines of
mm-hmm.
whatever your stress level is. And you play that thing, it's satisfying, it's challenging, and then you refresh, and then you could go and, you know, take care of other things you have to take care of.
Well, thank you guys both for joining me today, but thank you both for your lasting impact on a game that is honestly changing a ton of people's lives to this day. So
Cool. Thanks
you
very
guys
much.
should be super proud of it. Dennis, Michelle, thank you so much for sharing your stories, your involvement this last 30 minutes of me yammering on. Um, I mean, our community is going to be so excited to hear this, hear the
Cool.
stories. Thank you so much for your time today, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Leslie.
All right. As
We'll
always,
see.
don't forget to download Zoombinis, available today on everywhere you get your apps. Thanks.